Hello, everybody. Oh, what's that? Were you expecting Garrett to host this video? Silly you. This is more my speed. Why? Well, because I'm literally the Sandman, so I think I have experience with, powers like this. So, without further ado, I'm your host for today, Vincent, no last name, because I don't have a last name. Sasquatches don't really do that. And let's get into today's topic. Dreams are a place we escape to during the night when we're asleep. We're usually free from the stress of the day and have nothing to fear when we're unconscious. But there is one guy out there who can make any dream into a nightmare from which you will never awake. This is Freddy Krueger. All around, not a nice person. In life, he was a child murderer, and in death, he's no better. Freddy went on a killing spree in the town of Springwood, Ohio. Eventually, he was arrested, but because the search warrant used in his investigation wasn't signed properly, he was let off on a technicality. This made the parents of the murdered children very angry, so they formed a mob that stormed his house and burned him alive. But unfortunately, Freddy lived on after death and decided to keep his murder spree going. Freddy possesses the ability to enter people's dreams and can use dream logic to his advantage, being able to corrupt even the most pleasant of naps. And anything Freddy does to you in a dream will happen to you in real life, including death. As a bonus, while he's in the dream world, Freddy is immortal, so there's basically nothing you can do except try to wake up. While as previously stated, Freddy can manipulate dreams around him and kill you in a bunch of unique ways. His preferred style of killing is the clawed gloves he wears, which he can use to cut you to ribbons. But, like all good characters, Freddy does have weaknesses. For one, he can't leave the town he died in unless he manages to hide in the dream of someone who leaves town. Secondly, if you manage to wake up while making contact with him, you'll bring him to the real world, where he loses his power and becomes just as killable as a regular person. And finally, Freddy's powers rely on fear, so if you're not scared of him, then he has a harder time killing you. And it's been shown that if enough people don't fear him or even know he exists, then he can't even enter their dreams at all. Freddy first appeared in the 1984 horror classic Nightmare on Elm Street. In this film, a bunch of teenagers are starting to mysteriously die, but every adult seems weirdly quiet on the matter. But eventually it turns out that Freddy's the one responsible for the deaths, a way to keep his killing spree from stopping. At the end, Freddy is seemingly defeated once our main teen decides she's not afraid of him, which causes him to disappear. But it turns out Freddy was just bluffing, as the film ends by revealing she never woke up and Freddy's still tormenting her. One thing to know about this film is that Freddy is called Fred. Yeah, he's called Freddy in his song and before the final confrontation, but at every other point in the film, including the credits, he's called Fred. Eventually, I guess they realized that Freddy had a better ring to it than just Fred, so his name was elongated in every subsequent film. Also, Freddy is notably more sinister in this film. He's not as chatty as he is later on, and he doesn't crack his trademark dark jokes related to how he killed his victim, and he doesn't even call anyone the B word, so what the heck. The film was a massive hit, making back a lot of money. It had a budget of only $1 million, so of course it would be a success. Next year, we got the sequel, Freddy's Revenge. In this film, Freddy wants to enter the real world, so he ends up possessing a guy who moves into the house of the main character from the first film. This allows Freddy to move around the real world without the whole leaving dream world causing him to lose power thing. Eventually, though, he bursts into flames thanks to the power of love, but just like last time, it was a fake out and he's still alive. This film got pretty bad reviews when it first came out, with basically everyone considering it a major step down from the first film. Even Freddy's actor has said that this was the film he enjoyed the least of the ones he was in. And rather notably, the events of this film basically never got referenced again, so it's clear most of the people involved in this franchise don't like this movie. But in recent years, it's become a cult classic for its subtext, and like the first, it really did well at the box office thanks to its small budget. So you know what that means? More movies! Can you really call yourself a horror character if you didn't get, sequels that come out like clockwork? Exactly. 2 years later, we got Dream Warriors. Taking place a year after number 2, we're introduced to the fact that certain people have the ability to bring those into the real world into their dreams. This gives the survivors of Freddy an idea to attack him by using their own dream powers. Unfortunately, this onslaught leads to their friend getting kidnapped, so now they need a new plan. It's here we find out the only way to truly defeat Freddy would be to give his remains a proper burial. So they have to hunt down his skeleton, but apparently Freddy can just possess his own corpse. If he could do that the whole time, why did he not do that? Whatever. The skeleton ends up being purified anyway, and it seems like Freddy is dead, except at the end it's implied that Freddy's alive. Yeah, get used to me saying that. Can horror movies ever end on a happy note? I get they're supposed to scare you, but does every horror film in existence need to end with, oh no, the monster's still alive, ooh! It's such obvious sequel bait, and it gets annoying after a while. Like, just once, can we please get a horror movie that doesn't end with the reveal that the monster's still alive? Just once, please. Regardless, this was an important film for the franchise. It was once again a success, and some people even consider it better than the first film. But more importantly, it modeled Freddy into what he's best remembered for today. This is the film that introduced him killing foes in ironic ways relating to their personality, and cracking jokes about how they died. A year later, we got the fourth film, Dream Master. Turns out that everything that happened in the last one was for nothing and Freddy didn't die, so he ends up killing everyone from the last film, but as it turns out, doing that caused a new person to get dream powers. But Freddy decides he can use her to get out of town and wreak havoc on the whole world. In this film, Freddy meets his end after all the souls he has murdered over the years attack him, tearing him to shreds. But once again, it turns out, he survived! This film didn't get the best reception, but it became the highest grossing film of the franchise for a while. So more sequels! 1989. Dream Child. Freddy tries to mold a fetus into a prodigy by feeding it the souls of his victims. He dies again, but once again, is he really dead? Ooh! Made less money than the previous film and got bad reviews. At this point, the filmmakers realized that this was getting pretty tiring, so they finally decided to end the series with the next film, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. Released in 1991, this takes place 10 years in the future, so 2001. Freddy has basically wiped out all the children in town, so he decides to leave by possessing his own daughter. Oh yeah, he has a daughter, by the way. Anyway, we find out that Freddy's powers come from demons, so that's a thing. Yeah, this is one of those things they reveal about a character that basically nobody likes. Anyway, in this film, Freddy is pulled into the real world, is killed, and finally, we have a film that doesn't end with, ooh, is he still alive? Because honestly, after a while, it kind of loses its scare factor. This film got horrible reviews, with most people's issue being that the film can't decide if it wanted to be a horror movie or a comedy, since the previous films were horror movies, but this film, they play a lot of wacky sound effects, like boing, 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 boing. And also, the last 15 minutes of the film are in 3D, so that's a thing. But if this film gave us anything, it's the fact that Freddy kills someone with a power glove. And you know what? I think we need to stop for a moment to give this scene the true analysis it deserves. And now, an analysis on why the power glove scene from Nightmare on Elm Street whatever is the greatest moment in cinematic history and the greatest piece of social commentary ever made. The scene begins with Freddy playing video games and saying jump boy, because he needs to jump. Then he says jump again. This repetition could be an early sign of Freddy's insecurity about his burn marks. His victim runs into a version of his father, and Freddy says father knows best, which is chilling commentary on how we as a society place way too much stock into what fathers think about the future. A larger version appears, and Freddy says, now I'm playing with power, which is both a reference to Nintendo's old catchphrase, but also could be read as a commentary on how politicians have been playing mind games with us for centuries, and we have just been accepting it. Freddy, like a true gamer, also compliments the graphics. Freddy then uses the victim to break down walls while chanting right hook and jabbing the air, a subtle commentary on the economic crash of the 1920s that directly led to the Great Depression. Unfortunately, Freddy's game is interrupted so rudely when the controller is kicked out of his hand and then unplugged, so it seems like Freddy is lost, but like a true gamer, he always has a backup copy of his controller. In this case, he has a power glove. He informs the two rude people about it before locking the door like a true gamer should always do. He says pow, a commentary on the prisoners of war during Vietnam. He then starts jumping and repeatedly says boing, a reference to how no matter how hard we strive in life, there will always be people above us no matter how high we go. Freddy then kills his victim in the game and gets the high score, showing that there is truly nothing you can't do as long as you put your mind to it. Overall, this is a very thought-provoking scene full of all sorts of metaphors for hot-button political issues of its day, and it delivers it in a way that wasn't overtly preachy, so I give this scene a 10 out of 10, and it'll truly go down as one of the greatest scenes in the history of cinema, and it should have gotten the movie nominated for Best Picture. But no, it went to some stupid movie about quiet sheep or something. This is an outrage. And now, back to the video. The next film in the franchise was Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and this one is a bit weird. You see, this film is kind of like a meta-narrative, in that it stars the crew of the Nightmare on Elm Street films, as in the actual crew, being haunted by Freddy Krueger, who has ended up in the real world. This film got good reviews, with some calling it one of the best films in the franchise, but it underperformed pretty hard, becoming the lowest grossing film of the franchise. Its failure is often blamed on two things. One, slasher movies were kinda dead during this time, probably because of how many stupid ones came out during the 80s that made the genre look really bad. And two, people weren't ready for the whole meta aspect of the film. This was before meta became a really common thing in media. But it ended up becoming a cult classic, as stated earlier, because of people who watched it, they tend to like it. And hey, just 2 years later, the director of this film made Scream, which was also a meta horror movie, which got received much better, so it wasn't a total failure for him. The franchise went on hiatus for a while, but it got resurrected in 2003, when we got Freddy vs. Jason. Now, two of the most famous slashers will meet: Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th. The main plot of this film is that Freddy is being forgotten about, and as explained earlier, if you're not afraid of him, he can't hurt you. So he brings Jason back from the dead and sends him on a killing spree so he can reap the glory. But eventually the two of them get at each other's throats and fight, with Freddy eventually being decapitated by Jason when he gets pulled into the real world. Though the film ends with Jason rising from the lake carrying Freddy's severed head, which winks, implying more to come. But this is the last film for both franchises' original runs, so that's not happening. For a while, this is the last film, but then in 2010, Freddy appeared in the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. This retelling of the first film's events aimed to bring Freddy back to his roots and away from the whole, killing people with power gloves. Despite those days being what almost gave you guys an Oscar, you ingrates. Anyway, in this film, Freddy's killed by being pulled into the real world and then slashed to broken glass. But, oh no, he's alive, yeah. Film never got a sequel, and just like Friday the 13th, there hasn't been a new film since the remake. In other media, Freddy's made plenty of appearances. There was the TV show Freddy's Nightmares, which was an anthology show where Freddy told different horror stories, with the pilot notably being the first time we actually got an on-screen look at Freddy's backstory instead of it just being told to us. Most of the other episodes, though, have nothing to do with Mr. Krueger. He's just there to tell the story. There's also a video game for the NES, famous for the fact that they put the trademark logo on Freddy's name whenever it appeared, so that just kind of ruined the whole mood. Also, Freddy appeared as a guest character in Mortal Kombat 9, so that's cool. As for his influence on pop culture, Freddy was one of the most memorable villains of the 80s slasher craze, and he's been referenced many times in culture, since his powers are pretty cool, so it's pretty easy to homage. So that's Freddy Krueger for ya, and gotta say, Ooh, now that's what I call a head roll. What the boogie? What are you doing here? I thought you said you were gonna leave me alone. Hey, I just said I wouldn't try to kill you anymore. I never said anything about leaving you alone. Now you wanna play that game? Alright, let's play that game. Get back here, little booger. Oh, you can't catch me? Get back here. Oh, you can't catch me? What was that dream?